Hiya, this is Kitten Features, and you're listening to ShowX Live with Ken in the student accommodation all the way in Scotland. Wait, that was years ago. You're listening to ShowX Live with your favorite Scotsman Ken, currently residing in the US of A, and Wayne, mostly from Colorado.
Hey, wait a second. I'm on the show too, and I don't get any billing at all? Well, I know how to solve this. Soldater, Fremad, March! You're listening to Show X with our favorite Scotsman Ken, our child of the corn Wayne, currently living in Colorado, and Todd, who now has an army of angry Norwegians at his back. Enjoy the show!
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Show X. You're watching us live at 2 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. GMT on this Sunday, the 28th of February, 2021. To start things off, I do have to do a shout-out. Don't know if he's checked in today or not, but my younger brother, Earthweaver, today is his birthday. And he is turning a large, a tremendous round number digit today, signifying often the half-life of most men on his birthday today.
Oh my goodness!
Happy birthday to Earthweaver.
He's going out and buying an Italian sports car tomorrow.
It's funny because
Right?
he has been snowed in for weeks, essentially, where he's been at, and so he's, it's one of those things. He goes back saying, the times you really appreciate being a gamer, much like people in the pandemic as a whole, the times you appreciate that you have hobbies that allow you to sit comfortably in your house and use the things you've invested in. And so, yeah. No, it's funny, Mika, you say that about my brother's birthday being the 28th and not the 29th. Admittedly, being siblings, the kind of thing we would do is joke on him constantly that he was only ever a couple years old because he was really born on the 29th. It's just our parents were nice. And we celebrated 28th. In reality, he'd only ever had like 5 or 6 official birthdays, kind of thing. We used to joke on him all the time. As siblings do.
And so, as tradition, happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, President Earthweaver. Happy birthday to you.
Outstanding. So very happy birthday to my brother.
Yeah.
So happy that he is celebrating. All right. Today, we are going to be talking a little bit about the industry in gaming today and how we've all gotten kind of used to, I think, seeing, whether we agree, disagree, or partake in ourselves, this idea of early access games that companies, while in development for new products, new games, new ideas, new software coming out, are allowing or making available to users who are supportive or want to get into it the ability to essentially buy the game early, usually at a reduced cost, and to be able to start using gaming, playing with whatever it is before the official gold release. So we're going to be talking about the good, the bad, the potentially ugly of this mechanism system and what we've been experiencing in the gaming world. So prior to that, I do want to get into this special feature we have from our friend Ionis. Let's see if I can go and find, where was I going to put it? Guess I can put it in there. I just have to stop it when it's done. Yeah, I can do it there. I'll try to put it in a place that makes sense. Because he gave us a turn-in, wasn't expecting it. But he surprised us with his direct from the digital show floor of BlizzCon. He provided us his own in-depth analysis and coverage of what was going on. Brilliant. Yeah, he surprised it with me today. I mean, I knew he was out and covering things, but he just came in and said, look at this. I've got you some coverage. So let me go in here and find, where did I put it? as he gave us this. Oh, no, that's right.
Dun, dun.
I put it in the place that it would make sense to go, and that's why I'm not finding it yet. There it is.
That's nonsensical.
Right? Why would I do that?
Mad shouts to Paradox Entertainment for the following achievement in Steam. I captured the Bosphorus, and all I got was this lousy achievement.
Nice. Well played.
Pretty good. Pretty good.
All right, everybody. Here is our special coverage of BlizzCon 2021 from our reporter on the floor, Ionis.
Hello, Dog Dad. Can you hear me?
Yep, we hear you, Ionis.
That's great. I have to be honest, I can barely hear myself. As you can clearly hear, I'm at the ground floor of BlizzCon 2021, where fans of Activision games came together to celebrate the franchises they loved 15 years ago. For the last few years, BlizzCon events were marked by controversies. The infamous "you guys have phones, right?" quote from BlizzCon 18 and free controversy from 2019. Everyone was eagerly awaiting to see what PR disaster will plague BlizzCon 2021. However, now that the convention is over, we can safely say nothing truly controversial took place. In fact, the whole event was so lackluster in actual content that a week later, even YouTubers stopped talking about it. Here are the most important news. World of Warcraft is getting content patch in unspecified future. Diablo 2 regentrification has pixel art garlic. Diablo 4 has more classes than 3. Overwatch 1.9999999, no, it's actually 2, really guys, is going to have visceral combat with better bullet acoustics. Hearthstone new expansion goes to Barrens. No Chuck Norris jokes cards announced yet. And last but not least, the unexpected announcement of the Burning Crusade as the first expansion to World of Warcraft Classic took everyone by surprise. Word on the convention floor was that Wrath of the Lich King would be the first addition to the Classic Universum. With the announcement of TBC, some players were left stunned and confused. "Do I have to get revered to anti-heroics now?" asked one of the convention attendees during a Q&A session. "Is this some sort of out-of-season apropos joke?" The question, however, was never answered, because the Q&A panel was also pre-recorded, with pre-selected questions from pre-vetted audience members who themselves might have been Activision employees. This enhanced communication procedure was established to avoid uncomfortable questions about Warcraft Reforged and continuous violations of human rights in With the convention over, many people asked themselves one simple question: why? Why to have BlizzCon at all to announce series of content updates? This reporter has no answers, but he also has a cool new BlizzCon mount and a pet that costs him only $50. Now back to the studio with Dog Dad and the guys.
All right.
Oh my
Thank
God,
you
Ionis.
very
I'll
much,
tell you
Ionis.
what.
I appreciate it. Thank you for your report.
High quality content right
I'll
there.
I'll tell you what. Who's braver than Ionis? Ionis down into the Twitch and gaming YouTube pit to report live from BlizzCon. Yeah, what is Asmongold gonna do if he's got to get revered with all of the factions in order to do their heroics? Like, what's that gonna do to his viewer count?
He's also never going to be seen or heard from again now that he's mocked the Chinese government. So that also takes some balls.
That's also true. There goes his NBA career. Hey, the last guy to show support for Hong Kong doesn't have a job anymore. So who was in the NBA? So just
not far from the truth. Oh, thank you for that brilliant reporting, Ionis. Very much appreciated.
That was impressive, Ionis.
That was really awesome.
That's also the most. That's the most baby sounds I've listened to in my entire life or never planned to listen to. So thanks, Jeff.
For a second there, I thought I was in the Destiny 2 directory on Twitch, and I hadn't turned my sound down.
Oh, yeah, that was very while equal levels of energy, although not quite the same. Like words used is very similar to my recent Warzone and multiplayer Call of Duty matches when it accidentally opens up to all chat being turned on, so you hear everybody in the lobby. And in Warzone, it's terrible because it's 150 people, and all of a sudden you start hearing all the degenerates. That was very similar. Oh boy. So yes, that wonderful coverage. I think very succinct and capturing the feel of what BlizzCon was this year.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
I don't even know how we follow that up, to be honest.
No, there's nothing more to be said on that.
I mean, we're only 15 minutes in, and maybe we should call it a night.
And that's it. Oh, we're out of it. No. So with that,
we'll be at Discord for gaming immediately following.
No, we do have some great discussion to be had today. But again, thank you, Ionis. That was wonderful. So we're going to get into it a bit about early access gaming. This is something that is not a new trend, but it's something I thought was warranted to talk about this week because we continue to see more and more titles getting released on all of the various development platforms and things like that in essentially an unfinished form, but allowing people to get access to use it. So for those who don't know, I think actually there's a wonderful paper I found that was doing analysis on this called An Empirical Study of Early Access Games on the Steam Platform. And this was published back, it's actually fairly recent. I think just the end of last year they published this. But it was a thing they went in and did analysis of Steam Store because of all the metrics available. And talked about all the way back to how far it started. But to set the stage in some level, they say Steam is a digital game distribution platform developed by Valve Software. Over 8,000 games are distributed through Steam, and platform has over 161 million active players. The Steam platform consists of two major components, the Steam Store and the Steam Community. Players can purchase and download games through the Steam Store and interact with other players and game developers through the Steam Community. So we that is something I think most of us here are very familiar with. When they talk about this, it talks how far it goes back. Specifically to Steam, the early access release platform was launched on March 20th of 2013 with 12 game titles back in the day. However, early access games go far beyond that and often can be tied into crowdfunding as another source of where basically developers are going through non-traditional means to get their title out for gamers to be able to get hold of. In the old days, back in my day, games would be released traditionally onto your store shelf and things like that, and you'd go to the store and buy a game when it was done. And, you'd hear about the development of games and often be heard like when a game went gold, right? It meant that they had finished all the major developments, were basically putting it out to get pressed, because back in the day it was either getting it mass distributed on a floppy disk or CD-ROM or something like that, some means to get it out to you prior to digital distribution. And so at some point, a developer had to say, we're done. The game is finished. We've done all the tweaks and programming and testing we can do. We've put it on a disk, put it to store shelves so that you can acquire it. Now, for better or worse, that meant that when you went to a store, you could buy that game, put it in your computer, on your console, whatever it is, and just play it, right? That it was at that point in the state of play. Now, that leads to good, bad, and ugly, because there were some games that never quite got tested well enough, had some famous bugs in them and things like that, or other features that were maybe never intended that gamers found. But it was the game that was delivered, right? Later, or even during some of those times when the internet became a bigger thing and stuff like that, you could find some various ways to get access to games before they went gold. Famously, there were a lot of games, and I always go back to the original, like idsoft being one of the best in this. They used to give out alpha, or not true alpha, but like demos of games, things like that. We've talked about that before, where you get some snippet.
Shareware, yeah.
Shareware. Some types of, what was the other one? Because you had payware.
Apogee Software, the guys at Apogee that turned into idsoft were really great about doing shareware.
Yeah,
and the way that would look is you would get the first 9 maps on disc, and then you'd have to send like $15 or $10 in. And you would get some sort of, you would either get another disc or you would get a code that you could put in that would unlock the remaining levels of the
game.
Of the game. Yep. And so, when they talk about how Doom has been installed on more computers than Windows, they're really talking about Doom shareware.
Yeah,
because you can get the shareware for free.
Because they did that all the way up through Quake 1. I knew that in id that they did still the shareware model where you get a couple levels of the first world of Doom, or of Quake. And then there were 5 worlds in Quake or something, like 3 or 4 main ones, and then like the hidden one once you've beat all the rest.
Yeah, something like that.
In Quake. And so when you'd put in your disc or do the thing, you get the rest of them, right? So that was a means to get game kind of ways to access it. But the other one that became really popular, I was a huge fan of, and I used to wear it as like a badge of honor, was getting into closed betas and alphas and things like that, where you would basically contact a developer. They may throw it out to the world saying, we need testers beyond our internal ones, and they would select a small group, right, of people, and traditionally for free they would give you access, give you a key. You could download whatever version of the game was available at the time and play through it with this expectation that in most cases, if it was like a closed alpha or pre-beta or early beta type of format, that you would then try to give feedback about anything you found in the game that didn't work, right? Anything that broke, any things that like it crashed while you were playing, or you couldn't finish a mission because of something. And it really was to try to be a bit of a beta tester. And you were signing up for that when you joined the game, right? Knowing you're going to a beta, you knew it was unfinished, incomplete content that you were only ever going to get a piece of. It was never going to be the full game. And just so you could get an experience and pieces of what you were doing. And I used to love that because I beta tested a ton of games and was able to actually give feedback before the days of constant NDAs to tell people like this game's looking really good or this one, hopefully they do some work. It's rough, but that was a way to get into the game, but you weren't buying it, right? You were just wishing you'd put in, it was like a lottery to see if you could get. I remember having to fill out basically resumes for game betas to say, what other games have you played? What kind of games do you play? How often do you play? Right? Yep. Just for the developer to feel like you were worth the number of keys they were going to give out. Well, things have changed at some point, and I think if I can find in the day, one of the ones they mentioned is probably the kind of the true beginning of where this became the norm, or where it shifted from closed betas that were free to the new model of early access or pay to play beta. A lot of people are crediting it basically back to Minecraft as being one of the real ones to like showcase or kind of take advantage of this change in system. And the reason that's brought up, or one of the things about the story of it, is that Minecraft, when it first released, and I want to say it started development in like 2003, I think, when they said, and it was one that originally was being made, and it was free. It was completely free to play in its very early versions. And then at some point, basically, they did it as kind of initial crowdfunding setup, just like get some early payment in. And the developer, I forget his name right now, was making so much money off of that basically he quit his job to do full-time Minecraft development. And in doing so, started turning around and selling it in beta form, early access essentially, for like $20. And I remember
why wouldn't you, right?
Well, I remember when we went to Prime. Was it? I was saying Prime. The conference on the East Coast, PAX Prime, or West Coast, PAX Prime. Yeah. We went to PAX Prime. They had a Minecraft booth there, and they were just like selling it. And I think I had purchased it just prior, and it was still really early in that sense of how they were selling it because it wasn't as massive as it now is.
I remember when we picked up, it was super early. Like the features that are there now look nothing like the game used to look like. I remember back in my day.
Yeah, exactly. So it's been out there for quite some time, and it showed that you could fund development of a game instead of doing it, and it was primarily adopted by these independent developers and studios that didn't have massive backing, because we all know AAA titles in gaming take a lot of money to develop. And it's like so many other products out there in traditional format, you have to spend your own time, money, and whatever you're going to do resource-wise to create a playable game before you could sell it. And so you'd have to invest 3 to 5 years of your time at minimum. And in some cases, big titles could take more than that till you got to a point where you were comfortable selling a gold copy of your game out to the world. And so what they did with Minecraft and later with all these other early accesses is changed that script completely to say, we have made some level of development, or in extreme cases, and this one, the one I'll mention in this case was Star Citizen, extreme cases where, hey, remember me, I used to develop the kind of games you loved, and this is what Chris Roberts' pitch was. I made those Wing Commander games you all loved so many years ago, and I want to make a new space fighter game, and I just haven't because technology wasn't there before. But now that I'm ready to, I don't belong to a traditional game studio because it's been a decade plus since I've made a game. And so he came out and said, but if I can crowdfund enough money on my own, I will use my own funds or the funds shared and create this game as an independent studio. And enough people were like, I'm down for a new Wing Commander. Let's do that. And so you had other groups like that who are known. I've seen it happen with developers who are ex-employees of famous dev houses and stuff like that. We used to work on this title, like people who left Diablo, I think it was, to end up making, were they the ones who made Torchlight or something like that? I know there are devs that bounced around and stuff like that. So you have a lot of examples of that too, where people who are famous for making one title trying to expand to another, but are no longer part of whatever company can fund it. And so in order to get the money to not have to do this in their spare time, they've reached out to the community to say, could you help us by funding it before we make it out? And with a promise that we will take whatever money given and create the product you want. And so it's basically completely changed the paradigm from traditional development and investment in a game to a finished product that you hope sells to having people invest in the idea of the product and what might come about. And so I'm trying to think of some of the other famous ones or things that have come out around that, but those are at least a couple examples there. So beyond setting, hopefully that sets the stage for a lot of people what it is. The discussion I want to have today about early access gaming is essentially, is this good or bad? And focused on that, a good, at least that I've seen in it, is that you have now these game developers, these indie studios and stuff being able to afford to release games. You have companies that can reach out and say, hey, is my idea good enough? Is there enough people that are interested in that you're willing to give us money up front so that we can stop spending our time working whatever job I have and focus on this game and develop it for you to produce a game that might otherwise never see the light of day. Because I'm sure like any creative out there who's tried to get their product and make it to the masses, it's not easy. There are so many people out there trying to create things. To actually get it on a store shelf or something like that takes some work. And to do it as an independent developer, I don't even know the steps that takes. Right? I've been to
that reminds me of was it Dragon's Den, that TV show, right? That kind of idea where you pitch your idea and you show your credentials whether you can do it, and a panel of business people decide whether they're going to fund you or whatever. I mean, that was always kind of a silly idea, but I kind of like the fact this is now done publicly, right? So you let the public decide if they want to fund you. And that's a good idea when it comes from an individual or a very small studio that otherwise wouldn't be able to do it. I think the problem that we're seeing these days is it's no longer just these small indie developers that are doing this. It's now these massive development houses that are saying, hey, testing's expensive. And also, even if we pay testers, you can't, a professional tester who follows a script is never going to be as good as the equivalent of 10,000 people who don't know what they're doing and try different stuff randomly, right? I mean, that's effectively what you're doing, and all their computing power and all their time and so on. That's the cool thing. And if you have automated scripts to watch these players who are trying it for the first time or whatever, you can get all the bug reports that you need automatically without paying a dime, right? And that's where it's a lucrative idea for big developers to do it, as well as these small ones. And that's my biggest problem with it as well. Is I'm okay with like this small. I think his name from the Minecraft guy was Mark Gaiman. Is that right? I might be wrong. I like the idea.
I don't know. I don't remember what his real name is. I just know him as Notch.
Yeah, it's Notch.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, yeah.
But I love that idea. You know, a small indie guy who otherwise wouldn't be able to do it produces something people love, and that's kind of like what is supposed to be the meaning of capitalism, right? In theory, it's supposed to be this idea of we can the money will go towards brand new ideas as a competition against the big bosses in charge, the big companies that are taking up the economy. I love that idea. But in reality, it doesn't really happen that often, and it's because of what we're seeing that's spoiling it now, which is, these big companies are saying, hey, people are willing to pay money before we even do our testing and do our testing for us. Let's just make them do it.
Yeah. So that's one of the big things that has changed in the industry, right, is that we've had in the past, and Babs bringing it up and kind of highlighting what it is you're saying, Ken, that in the past, indie developers took advantage of being able to get enough money to continue development and fund and create something. But now that big developers have figured out that this thing works, we have AAA companies and companies that generally they have the resource to make a traditional game and wait to sell it until it's done, are turning to this early access market. And we're seeing more and more titles that are coming out in some format in early access so that you can pay money in any case from as limited as, I think the report they said they looked at the average time that games stayed in early access before becoming full games on Steam Store, as little as 30 days, which is rare, to some that have been in early access for years and basically never come out of it.
And some big names too.
Absolutely.
DayZ,
right?
Was in early access for 5 years, Rust for 4. Fortnite was in early access for 3.
I think Fortnite, I got to double check. Fortnite might be one that's still not, did it ever go gold officially? It might still be well, no, that's the thing. Fortnite,
well,
the way
so
it was in the report. It was in the report.
Yeah.
Fortnite Battle Royale, the free mode, was released, etc., whatever, but there's actually a game associated with, supposed to be like a single player or some kind of other game with it, that is still in beta officially. And that was, I think, the original plan of that one.
Yeah.
And so you get this weird state we're in where there's a lot of different levels and status of games and where they're at in this format of whether they're truly, it's almost a question of, is the system of early access and whatever, alphas and stuff like that people now basically pay to play, is that really just an excuse for developers to release a very early version of a game and get paid for it versus taking the risk on trying to complete something more full and lose interest or never get it out in time to really take advantage of people's interest?
Sure, but at least it's honest.
Is it though?
Let's compare this to what you were saying earlier, right? I mean, we're talking about Doom, right? Where you have the sharedware games where they release the first few levels that people can play either for free as a trial before buying more, or potentially it's just like the first few levels are effectively complete, though, right? And then they could go work on the rest, and people could purchase the rest. I kind of like that idea.
Well, admittedly, back in those ones,
that's not bad if the first few levels are actually complete. You're not getting some broken, buggy thing that's never going to be finished. You just pay a smaller amount or something instead.
So
that seems like a nice middle ground to me.
There is a difference though between the two, because shareware games were not a couple levels and that's it. They were complete games. It was just the advertising mechanism for it was to release a locked portion of the game, saying that you can unlock the rest. So it wasn't like they were just giving you what their vision was of the game in the form of a level or two, and then we hope they will finish building it. The games were done. They just gave that out as a way to do free advertising, essentially, and give people a taste. Where today what we're seeing is games that you may get early access to, and the game barely functions. And I'll be critical, even though I love the game as a whole, Star Citizen, the first access to it was essentially a hangar and an early model of the game you would buy into that had like the one ship you paid for, right? Your first ship. And you could go into the hangar and you could look at your ship and you could walk around it. That was like the first release of Star Citizen's early access. It later added the arena mode where you could fly against a couple rudimentary AI ships in a very small sphere of space, but it showed off the engine and how pretty it could be. And I mean, since it has absolutely grown, but it was one where they didn't even release a playable game at first when people were buying in. It was truly the sense of, we are selling you the vision, an idea of a game. And it's something that I think is a great one to showcase as one of the risks associated with this whole concept is Star Citizen is still, what is it? We're officially at like officially it was announced in like 12 and funding started in 12. And so we're essentially 9 years into it and it's still not a fully playable game. Like, I can play it and there's an experience there to be had and sometimes it's a lot of fun, but it's still a heavily buggy mess, and they keep updating the roadmap for it, and there's no end in sight. We still don't know when it'll be out. And there's other examples I could say that I played, right? Minecraft being one, but another one for me was Terraria. And I played the heck out of Terraria for a while.
Let's talk about some of the less successful ones, though.
Well, so that's the thing, right? And please bring up a few. I'm going to show you. They had some numbers in here for ones, like the percentage of games that actually make it versus fail, coming out of early access. And there's some famous examples that they gave of ones that got a bunch of hype and existed for a year or so, and then just went the way of the dodo essentially and died.
Well,
and all the money invested went away as well.
Fully dead, and that was No Man's Sky. Right, No Man's Sky was pretty much this pie in the sky idea of a game that sounded awesome, and people were really hyped. And a lot of loads of time went into development, and it did not deliver upon what was promised at all.
But is that a function of the early access system, or is that the function of a guy who's a technical guy being put in the role of marketing out of necessity or by choice or whatever the reason, and not really understanding that his primary job in that role was to manage expectations?
No, that is absolutely part of the system, because we're seeing this with there's many examples of this happening. But I think more fail than actually have partial success or eventual success like No Man's Sky did. But No Man's Sky is just one of the more popular versions. And I think because of the hype that it had, it meant that it did eventually have success regardless, because there was still money there that could be used. But no, I think it's definitely a part of the system. If you allow people who, as you said yourself, are not skilled in these different roles and are effectively making false promises, then, they've still taken the money from everybody. It doesn't matter whether it's before or after. They're still making these promises that they can't fulfill.
So with your example,
the difference is that at least if they wouldn't have gotten to that stage if it wasn't for the system, though, right? If they didn't have the money, that would never have happened.
Ken, I hear you, but if you look at the sort of the lead developer and the interviews that he's giving, like, he's being asked leading questions and he's not pushing back on what's being asked. And if anything, he gets excited about the idea and is like, oh yeah, we want to do that too. And like, I understand that the original release of No Man's Sky didn't deliver on
most of the promises,
much of what was promised. I understand that. But at the same time, like, had a seasoned marketing or advertising person been in those interviews instead of one of the developer guys, we would look at No Man's Sky totally differently, because they wouldn't have said, oh yeah, it's totally multiplayer and you can totally meet people in it. No one...
that wasn't an exaggeration. That was just a false claim. And they even claimed after it was released. They said, it's just so big.
The universe
that was so famous,
expansive.
Yeah. That was a famous one.
That's bad.
Well, so here's the thing, right? So yeah, did No Man's Sky give itself more hype than it maybe deserved initially? Absolutely. Yeah. However, then the conversation continues, because you have like Legend saying in there, and Mika, they play it right now as apparently Legend is playing currently, because the game has come a long way, is now multiplayer, is now answering a lot of those initial claims that were made when it was first brought into that early access model.
I'm not saying otherwise.
Well, but that's the question,
I know
right?
Eventually came back.
Well, so
But it
that's
doesn't change the fact that they had that huge fall.
well, so and to what Todd said, if the marketing team was better about it and got a hold of what the developer was saying, they would have been able to say eventually, or things that would have mitigated people's expectations. But so my question to you guys then is, do you think that with that kind of level of hype, because I guess one of the goals, right, for early access is to generate money and hype and interest in your game so that you can continue developing it. So is it okay for developers to try to sell the vision, the idea of what the game could become, what they hope to accomplish when they're trying to reach out and get people's money versus saying what you're going to get up front at the beginning? I mean, is it okay?
No Man's Sky is not the first video game to bait and switch people.
Daikatana?
No, definitely no.
As well as
yeah, Daikatana would be one. I was thinking of Hearthstone, right? I mean, they wrote seriously. They wrote this huge post the very first time that they nerfed a bunch of cards arbitrarily. They wrote this huge, essentially design philosophy document, right? Here's why we're nerfing these cards, and here's the philosophy behind that. And then they proceeded to violate that design philosophy document at every step along the way since the thing was written. Right?
Well, that's because the developers will have written the design philosophy, and the designers will have written that, followed by the marketing guys who are actually in charge said, yeah, we need to make more money.
And by the way, your game isn't released until its feature set is complete, so Hearthstone's still a beta.
I think
by the way,
debatable.
That's how bitter I am.
That's debatable.
Well, it's one of those things. Though. Well, the scope of the game may have changed, right? I go back to Star Citizen, and one of the challenges I have with the development in Star Citizen, and again, I love it in general terms, but I'm openly critical about the fact that I bought into the idea that Chris Roberts was making a new Wing Commander game, a standalone. My hope was the updated engine of Starlancer, which to me was like the pinnacle of what he had been doing previously, of a single-player focused, story-driven flight sim in space that happened to have, where I was hoping he was really going to expand on it in Star Citizen, happened to have multiplayer co-op availability to the missions. Because Starlancer did all that and was awesome. And so I was hoping this would be the modern engine that did that, and we would get a game. And based on what he initially pitched, I was like, I'm down. Give me that updated version. And my expectation, without them claiming it specifically, was that in 3 to 4 years at worst, maybe 2 to 3 years, I would have this new Wing Commander game. Because the original goal, right, his original spec was, if we can crowdsource $1 million, we will make this game. That was the original pitch for it. And then, as was happening with the old Kickstarter days with this one, they had stretch goals. It was a means to which say that, however, if enough people get interested and get enough people funding, and this is more Kickstarter model than it is an early access model, but if we generate X amount more money than the base we want to build the game, we will do other things. And initially it was like, we will have missions that span multiple systems. We will have more ships. We will have missions that include bigger ships and things like that. I was like, I'm down with that. That's just an expanded Wing Commander experience. At some point, because nobody really expected the level of interest that hit Star Citizen, they were getting so much funding. By the end of I think the original Kickstarter piece, where Kickstarter gets a portion of the funds done, they had generated some like $15 to $20 million or more. And that's just off the top of my head. It's probably way more than that. And they transitioned their model to their own self-funding service through their own site. And for those who haven't followed, haven't kept up, they somewhat recently, by the end of last year or earlier this year, passed the $300 million mark for the amount of funding that has gone into Star Citizen. And so in that model, they far surpassed that $1 million pledge of we're going to make this single-player game. And the challenge is because now that they've gotten so much funding, we have no idea what the heck they're doing. Not true. They are very transparent with all their developer stuff and what they're showcasing. But that original vision got morphed and sidelined. And that's something as a consumer, someone who paid into that vision, there's concern because I bought for the single player experience, and then the effort has almost solely gone over to this MMO style persistent universe flight sim that they're now building that is Star Citizen. And they actually split out the original effort to Squadron 42 as something that is still supposed to be that original vision. The challenge is because they got so much money and so much money and so much vision, and Chris Roberts basically did the thing where it's like, oh, that's a good idea. Oh, that's a good idea. Oh, that's a good idea. Much like the No Man's Sky developer where it's like, yeah, we want to do that too. We now get this idea that it's almost like Chris Roberts is trying to build a life simulator somewhere set in the kind of future where they're trying to tackle every aspect of physics and natural life and progression and every mechanism in life down to the way the economy works, to how your biology works of your system, what the cold does to you, the heat, how long you run, whether last time you ate, to the crime stats and how you have to get out of prison, to mining and the markets. And it's like, it's just expanded to this whole like life simulator.
We want to do EVE Online. Great. And we want to do No Man's Sky. Okay. And we want to do Stardew Valley. Okay. And we want to do StarCraft. Yeah. And we want to do Moon Patrol.
It really has.
And we want to do.
Oh, you're not far off on that because you really have the challenge
NASCAR, the game as well.
Well, we've raced in it. The challenge is that in creating such an open sandbox and doing so much with it, specific to Star Citizen and something that is a potential risk in all of these kind of games, is scope creep. Anyone who's ever worked on software, on a project of any kind, understands that there's a massive potential risk involved with scope creep. That in traditional formats of gaming, right, in development from I've seen, you kind of have a fixed level of cost, right? In a traditional game, you're like, you have this much money to make this game you pitched. And because of that, you build the overall plan, the project for completing that game within that parameter. Yep, I have this much time, this much money, this many developers, do it. In all of these early access games, that's not really the case, right? It's we believe it'll cost us this much to do something.
True.
But we could make more. Or less.
There's another aspect to that, Wayne, too. There used to be physical limitations based on distribution media.
Oh, yeah.
There's only so much data that fits on a DVD. There's only so much data that fits on 3.5-inch floppy disks.
Yep. Well, we're seeing this creep with consoles now, right? We're seeing this with, I think it was news this week that Call of Duty will no longer fit on traditional PlayStation.
On PlayStation 4, the 500 gig version, like the one that has half a terabyte of storage, if you were to install the full Call of Duty suite that's come out recently with Black Ops and Warzone, it may not fit.
So 50 gigabyte downloads with a 50 gigabyte day one patch in a lot of cases on a console, right? Now, for me, on my PC, that's not a big deal because I'm right now directly connected to a fiber connection. So for me, it's 1,000 or as close to 1,000
synchronous gig. Ah, so jelly.
Like, it's sexy. It is. You can push download on a game, and I think the biggest I've seen is like 48 megabytes a second. Real download speed.
I said I via a good Steam network here, I've seen 90.
Nice.
Like
that's crazy.
Dang. Yeah.
That's fantastic. But so the point of that is at 50 megabytes a second, like a 50 gig patch, not that big a deal, right? 1,000 seconds more or less. So no big deal. Half hour. Not a problem. It takes 4 hours via the Wi-Fi to get 50 gigs onto a PlayStation 4. That's not trivial.
Yep.
It took when the Mistress of Giggles and I decided to do Final Fantasy 14 trial, right? she had to download it onto her PS4. Like I went into Steam and like, okay, we'll do this, put in all my information, downloaded it. I'm watching the download timer. It's like 20 minutes. Like rock on. I like that. Walked out into the living room, 3.5 hours.
Oof.
To download that sucker.
Well,
That's
we were
not
doing
so
this.
bad. I've definitely seen worse.
Well, but
Oh yeah,
but
there's definitely worse.
You bring up a big point when we talk about scope creep and that general thing is another one of those foundational things a programmer would have to deal with. And this is true of, I think we've talked about in the past, just the introduction of the internet to all gaming platforms, right? And it's I think exasperated by the early access the whole concept of it, because now we get, like we said, there was in the previous generation of the consoles, it was still at least an idea that they would have to mint something on a disc that was playable or at least installable. And yet we started running into so many, and it used to be an actual thing that we'd bitch about when it came up about day zero patches. Usually worse on a console than PC, but it's hit the PC market too, where we're not even going to let you play the game until you download this patch. And we've all suffered a point where I am super excited to get the new shiny game that I just paid for, that I've been waiting, however long to play. And I go to hit start and it says, great, now we're downloading this additional patch that's X amount and will take 30 minutes to an hour. And you're just like, what the bloody heck, right? It should just be on the disc. I should just play it.
Part of that is the going gold process.
That is, in my opinion, gone.
When you're finally done with the well, it's not, but it's still real. Like you still have to submit your game to the distributor, right?
True.
Yeah.
And get it approved, whatever the hell that means, for listing on the store, and that takes time. And that time comes off the schedule, right? So, and it's even worse if you've got a publisher deal. It's not as bad for early access, but if you're like trying to do this for reals and you've got a publisher and the publisher's helping you get listed on all these stores, right? The publisher ends up being, from a software dev perspective, the publisher ends up becoming your customer. And so they're going to give you a schedule and you just have to make it. Like it's not like our world. It's not like the aerospace world where there's this perpetual game of what I call schedule chicken that happens. It's like none of the contractors can make their dates and everybody knows that. But it's a question of which contractor's going to admit to the customer that they're not going to make their date first, so that everybody else can go, oh, well, since Bob's aerospace company's going to blow his schedule, guess what? We're all going to blow ours too. And it doesn't matter because the system that we're reliant on to do anything isn't going to be there for another 18 months. So, by the way, that happens.
Oh, all the time. Like, no, I have like a dozen examples I'm not allowed to talk about on the tip of my tongue.
Anybody who's had a job, not even like software development, just a job, has seen this, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, so bad.
But gaming's not that way, right? You can't go. I mean, who's going to go to Take-Two and say, hey, Take-Two, this game needs another year to cook?
Well, that's a challenge, right?
Is anybody?
Well, the argument,
hey, Activision, like before you buy the studio, or hey, EA, before you buy our studio and kill it, like I need another 14 months to finish bug squishing in the game that's going to cause you to buy me and kill my studio.
So then my question would be on that idea, does early access mitigate some of that? Because you now have developers saying we're giving you access while we're building it. We've now opened up the bandwidth on when things may actually be done, and we essentially have way more soft dates for releasing. And because you as consumers are already playing the game, is it such a big deal that we may push things a little further because we're finding all these additional bugs or things we want to build? And because the consumers are already playing it, if our general feedback, and I'm looking at the ones that have gone massive, Factorio, the new Dyson Sphere, Valheim, all the ones that are current out there that essentially went through a period of, Factorio hit 1.0, right? But Valheim and Dyson Sphere are still in beta. They're in that early access phase. Yet they're booming, right? They're massive. You know, Valheim is trending constantly right now.
Oh, dude, I've seen so I feel like I didn't even know of it until last week. It's been everywhere. I can't escape it. It's all over Reddit.
And that's the thing, though. It is early access. It is not a complete game. And the people have been talking about how there is so much more they plan to do. And it's just like in Dyson Sphere, I talked to Sir Spencer about it. He's having a great time with it. And it's supposed to introduce things like enemy creatures and stuff like that apparently don't even exist today. And so there's so much potential still, but people are loving it now.
So I'm gonna come back to this. It's honest, right?
Okay.
Slapping the early access label on something is like, hey, you're buying into a game that's still in development. When I bought Slay the Spire originally, it was still in early access. But it's like, oh, it's a roguelike deck builder. Like, okay, I'll take that for a spin and see what that's like. I like CCGs. I like deck building. I think deck building is vastly more interesting than actually playing the game for a lot of these CCGs, because it's where all the creativity is. So I'll take a stab at that. Slay the Spire is great. If you haven't bought it, you should consider it because it's quite good. By contrast, think of a Star Wars Battlefront or a World of Warcraft expansion, Diablo 3 in its original configuration. If you want something more modern, Cyberpunk 2077, that
they had traditional models,
all traditional models, I think all reviled. I mean, I can't point to a specific World of Warcraft expansion that was broadly reviled, but you get the idea. Like
Warlords of Draenor was broadly reviled. Okay,
so there is an example, Warlords of Draenor, that were all just like, the hate was the release of Hellgate London, caused the spawning of a website called Flagshipped, where it was a bunch of butthurt Diablo 2 fans that wanted Diablo 2 in London with, but MMO, and didn't get what they had put in their heads that they were expecting, and we're just gonna stamp their feet until the game died. And by the way, it worked.
I don't think that was the only problem with the game.
Well, no, the game had the game had its problems. Don't get me wrong, but it was not nearly as bad as the people who created the flagship website said it was.
So,
for sure.
So I have a question based on that, right? Because Cyberpunk being one of the more recent ones, where there was a lot of hype, and it came forth from development video and discussion that went back years to the more recent videos that hit like a year or two prior to it launching, where people were just like, this is going to be our end-all be-all game, right? It's going to do all the things. And the developer didn't do enough to dissuade that. They did play along and say like, yep, we're going to do a lot of these things, and didn't have an honest discussion about the performance differences between different versions of it, which really bit them. But do you guys think there is any kind of like repercussion of the early access model and the access that people are getting to games during development compared to traditional games and the hype built around them when you don't have access to seeing how it's going under the curtains, right? That you're just kind of like, yep, they told us it's going to be great, so I have to see when it's released if it's great. To the early access where we're hoping it'll do all these things. It doesn't yet, but they did this little thing, and they're adding this thing, and we're seeing this.
Well,
and
yeah. I think the key difference is that you have the community involved, right? So when you're in a early access, you say we want to develop these things. You can have a communication with your fans and effectively your stockholders, in a sense. At least people who hold the money in a way. And you can say, bluntly, do you want this? Do you like that? What do you think of this idea? And you can get feedback as you go in the design process. Whereas if you're saying, this is the trailer for the game, here's Diablo 4 coming out eventually, That's that. You don't get a say in how that's going to be. You know, there's. I don't think any person thinks that they can post on a forum and actually get a result from the developer of this will change something, because it won't, right? But when it comes to a small-time developer like Factorio or something, if you say, "Hey, I noticed this issue with what you guys said. Have you thought about adding this instead?" Quite often they'll do it. They'll just say, "Yeah, sure, we'll add that in." You know, because small-time. I think it's more to do with the size of developers than it is necessarily. Early access versus big time developer investing, but still,
there's an element of purity of design when you're not in early access, when you don't have that direct feedback from the customer base. And let's not forget that 50% of the customer base is dumber than average.
Yep.
Right. So let's not.
Oh, that's a good point. The average of that customer base, perhaps, but I think if you take, I don't know, let's say, oh, I don't know, what game do I want to crap on?
It doesn't matter. I don't want the bottom 50. I don't want the bottom 50% of any game's customer base, even something as esoteric as Europa or Hearts of Iron or Pick Your Paradox.
That's what I was going to say. I imagine the bottom 50% of Europa players are probably better than the top 50% of Facebook Farmville players, right?
Oh, that's certainly, yes.
Well, for that market, or
that being said, I don't want the bottom 50%, and I'll give you the other side of that argument in just a second. I don't want the bottom 50% of that player base influencing the design of Europa. By the way, I don't want the top 1% of the player base influencing the design of Europa either. Right? So I don't want either. I would much prefer, and by the way, looter shooters are the worst for this, in my opinion, because there are a small group of loud and obnoxious gaming YouTube / Twitch streamers in the looter shooter genre, and they're a hive mind.
Okay.
So when Looter Shooter X gets announced, like there are 6 videos the next week that say, well, it's got to have raids and one hit kill griefing in PvP, or it's not going to be any good. And it's just like, well, first of all, it doesn't have to have raids because no one raids, and secondly, one hit kill griefing in PvP sucks. And by the way, I know when you say you want one hit kill griefing in PvP, you want one hit kill griefing in PvP where the only weapons capable of one hit killing are only available in the raids. So you just want your PvP grind to be easier because that's going to make your channel better or grow more, or you'll be able to do highlight vids.
Well, essentially what you're mentioning, what I'm hearing is that it's like the challenge is when you get that kind of input, even in like early access, any kind of directed input that developers might actually pay attention to, there's a risk involved of people pressing for the version of the game that suits them specifically, versus working on the idea of what good game based on the overall vision of the original intent the developer creator had, and just tweaking to make sure it works. You're getting more and that there's a question about that risk of early access, right? Having people buy in while you're still developing, does that then also give them more onus on the development of the game? Like they feel much more like their voices, their opinions deserve to be heard, versus the person who's like in your your traditional game, right? Where we may invite you in to taste a piece and check it in beta or something like that, but it's our game and we're building it. You're just helping us figure out if there's broken parts. Versus the constant stream of, I played it today and this part was fun, and you changed this thing and I hate you now forever, or that you get off an early access game.
So what other disciplines, products do we see this reflected in? Like, is there any analogous system out there to this? Like, I know in book writing we don't have this, right? You don't have somebody who writes a book chapter by chapter and then reformats and changes it as people complain in the comments.
Sure you do. That's just fanfic. That's fanfic that someone puts together into a book later.
Yeah, that's hard. That's not making any money.
That's not really a book, though.
It's probably not making any money.
Off the cuff, I can't think of any, but that's one of those where maybe.
No.
I would argue that any as a service applications out there are of the same ilk. Maybe not exact.
I'm curious.
But, and here's why I say that. I've been to pre-sales training meetings in different places throughout Europe with the developers of tools that I resell essentially, and they show us the roadmap of features that they're going to be developing, and then they ask us what our feedback on that is. Like, well, hey, what do you guys think of this roadmap? And sure, it's only 12 people in a room, but we're not the only pre-sales training session that ever happens, right?
Yeah.
And it's not just happening in Europe, it's happening in the Middle East, and it's happening in different parts of Asia, and it's probably happening in North America too. And so you are getting there are small groups of people that are giving real-time feedback on the development of new features for software tools other than just gaming.
Okay. Well, but do you feel like those developers feel beholden to those people who are going to be selling it, or that they're just looking for positive feedback, like the focus group type feedback?
Well, based on the number of times I've been told to get bent, I mean, in much nicer terms, nobody ever is like, Todd, you're an idiot. Like, why the hell would you want that?
Thank you for coming. I'm glad to hear you. No.
Thanks for the feedback. We'll take it under advisement.
Yeah.
Like, and by the way, the thing that I have asked about more than once is to have a developer guide for the JavaScripting aspect of a specific tool to be more intuitive to people who aren't JavaScript developers.
What? Isn't everybody?
No.
Right? No. Jeez.
It might as well be.
It might as well be a JavaScript developer.
Sanskrit on stone tablets, because I cannot interpret or discern what's going on in the documentation.
So that's the thing. I don't know of any other product or development that really has the level of interaction that early access does, because you have people from upfront who are playing it constantly and a lot of conversation noise happening about it. With other things like traditional products, you have focus groups and stuff like that they may take what you have into account, but it sounds like they're still going to be looking for building the same core product they always were. And I don't know if in early access games I have any examples of ones that took a complete left turn from original design based on the feedback. We definitely have seen things like No Man's Sky and others have really focused on what they changed or fixed based on feedback to get it to meet the standards and such. And we've seen other projects that have just, one of the disadvantages, like things that have just disappeared completely. And unfortunately, there's a risk involved with early access that you don't get with gold games, in that an early access game may never actually release, may never get completed. And so we're going to take a quick break here. I say this as I haven't actually picked a new song for this week. But we're going to take a break here shortly to let everybody refresh, constitute, and then come back with a email that we got in from our man in the sand, Ionis, that's going to talk a little bit more about MMOs and such. So we're going to get that here in a second.
Is he really in the sand? Just point of order really quick. Is he really in the sand? He's in Poland.
True, I don't know.
Like
what would you associate?
Like our man in the fields? Oh, this will be good, and it's some local Polish flavor. Our man in the salt mine.
Hey?
Because there's a really famous salt mine in Krakow.
Have our term for Ionis being like still chipping away at the salt.
Yeah. Our salt miner. And you can take that any way you want to.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think.
So yes, we're gonna play a quick remix here. This one that I just found and picked in the list is from Heavenwraith, Bravely Default's Virgin Mojito. remix from OC Remix, because we like that they provide game-related content that we can play on the show without getting in trouble. So we'll be back right after this break. We're going to talk about the email from Ionis, and we're going to continue our discussion about early access. And one of the questions I generally have about, is it more detrimental than good, having this access model, and what are some of the long-reaching things that it causes in us as gamers and a gaming community with the prevalence of early access? So think about that, and we'll get back to it after this break. And so this will be just about 4.5 minutes, or just under that, and we'll be back after this.
listening to ShowX on VtWProductions.com.
All right, everybody, and welcome back to it. It's funny, just looking through as we were talking about all these different early access things. Killing Floor 2 is still in beta. Like, yeah, yep. And it's talked about, like, I'm looking more at the stats here in this paper they put out, that 15% of the games on Steam use early access as a model for their introduction to the world and growing. And 25% of the early access games have more than 48,000 users or owners, while almost 29 million owners for one of the studied games. So kind of a range of like how many people are buying into early access, which is huge. And it says, as we were talking about the independent versus other, it says 88% of the early access games are indie games. Whereas that leaves that other 12% or so are actually from bigger developers. So yeah, it's an interesting model as a whole for what early access is and just all the numbers behind it. I need to find a link back to this original article if anyone wants to read it. It's like 30 something pages of pretty in-depth analysis. But I wanted to get to another email they have, more content we have from our friend Ionis. And so, oh gosh, as I didn't refresh my beverage, but we'll see how quick I can get through this. This one is called MMO Wall of Talk, as it is another wall of Ionis. So everyone, hello gang and gangreens. It's me, an Ionis, coming to you live where, for the listener, no time has passed. Last week, you gents talked a lot about MMOs and World of Warcraft, so I feel called out to bombard you with an unsolicited commentary on the topic. First and foremost, Final Fantasy XIV. I'll be honest, I started this experiment with a lot of reservations, and by saying that, I meant it all looked like a weep fest to me. I carried this Eastern Asian MMO aesthetic, and I feel uneasy about it at first. Then it got even worse, as the game tried to teach me how to use the mouse and press buttons. While Octil spent some of the time doing all inner-city tutorial stuff, I escaped from the hamster treadmill at level 3, going into the wilderness and killing random ladybugs. I don't care about the story. I don't care about how to become an effing lumberjack. I wanted to see the combat dynamics, and after doing whatever I could to fix default UI, I went into the world with my Conjurer level 3 and started pressing Alt-1 a lot. And it was quite satisfying. The combat was slick, enemy abilities were correctly telegraphed, public quests were easy to identify, and same with side quests and zone transitions. The last bit took me a bit to get used to, as I generally don't think of MMORPGs as places split into smaller zones connected by narrow transitions. It slowly started growing on me, and by the time I got to level 15, it felt I had a good grasp on basic know-how of the world. The story had a central narrative quest that pushed the main plot forward. Next in line of importance were the class quests. The push forward the plot of your particular job. After that, you have some basic side quests. Go there, deliver this, kill 5 of those. And at the bottom were the public quests that spawn continuously in every zone. I took my time leveling, getting to level 26 in a week of playtime. That's taking your time? Dang. And I'm actually excited to hit level 30 where I can pick a new job. White Mage. Gonna heal the crap out of people. I could say the aesthetic really grew on me, but it definitely isn't as obtrusive as I worried it would be. I do enjoy the armors in the game so far. Maybe it's the post-WoW talking now, but boy, do I enjoy not having shoulder pads that would tear my, trapezius from the spine? Speaking of WoW, if you also talk about it a bit, especially when it comes to dungeons, and boy, do I do a lot of them, and I can honestly tell you the philosophy of creating 5-man content evolved a lot over the last 15 years. Blackrock Depths runs or full Strathome runs just do not belong in the modern World of Warcraft anymore. The closest thing to this old school experience is the 18th floor, Torghast Tower Crawl. That should take about 2 hours for a group of up to 5 people. Dungeons themselves. They are calculated to be finished in 30-ish minutes with 3 to 5 bosses per dungeon. Saying that, modern dungeon experience isn't really focused on length, but scalable difficulty and equally scalable rewards. Normal dungeons are now the absolute bottom tier to be done with leveling greens, and even then you probably won't have much trouble clearing it half asleep. Heroics are mildly challenging, with some hard-hitting abilities that might or might not kill you if you stand in them naked. Mythic Dungeon is a new base standard with extra boss abilities, some of which, if not reacted to correctly, will hurt the group a lot. From there on, we're entering Mythic Plus territory. And this is how it works. As you finish your first Mythic Dungeon, you receive a +2 key to a random dungeon. Upon entering said dungeon, you'll have a chance to activate the key, which will make the dungeon more difficult, but grant you better quality rewards. The dungeon will also get a timer, usually between 30 and 40 minutes. If you manage to finish the dungeon before the timer runs out, you get the key upgraded to +3 or +4, +5 if you did the dungeon with a lot of time to spare. With each higher key number, the bosses and trash mobs get a percentage increase to their health and damage done. On +2, the boss is only 8%, but by the time you reach +11, that number equals 100%. On top of that, M+ instances have so-called affixes. Affixes are additional difficulty modifiers that change every week or on a reset base. The new affixes are applied at levels. +2, +4, +7, and +10. So when you're doing a +11 key, not only do everything have 100% more damage and health, you have 4 different affixes to deal with. Affixes range in difficulty, and you have objectively easier and harder weeks, with different combinations of affixes putting pressure on different members of the group. To give you an example, Sanguine affix leaves a blood pool on the ground in place where a trash mob died. The blood pool will rapidly damage players standing in it, while healing all remaining mobs that are inside. You either have to actively kite the mobs around the room as their health is going down, or kill them at the same time to avoid any of them benefiting from the pool left by their friends. Explosion affix, on the other hand, causes fireballs to spawn from every enemy engaged by the group at random intervals. Those fireballs instantly start casting at 6-spec explosion spells. If they finish the cast, they explode, dealing flat 40% damage to the group. Someone must destroy them before they blow up. There are in total 15 affixes, and they rotate over the course of 12 weeks. So to be completely honest, while Shadowlands shipped with only 8 dungeons, TBC was released with 15, it feels like the content has more potentially longevity. Of course, by the end of the day, you're running the same 8 dungeons over and over again, and no bells and whistles will change that, so it clearly isn't for everyone. In a way, I also long for those old dungeons where you feel like you're actually going on an epic adventure that will take hours to fully complete. However, even the announced Mega Dungeon in 9.1 will hardly feel like that. Today, everything is on YouTube, Wowhead, or inside the game's dungeon journal, and very few people really go in blind anymore. This makes me feel nostalgic for Star Wars: The Old Republic. I raided there with some of my friends, and we came to an understanding to never read any guides before heading into new content, or if you read something, keep your mouth shut and let everyone figure it out. It gave us an opportunity to enter boss rooms and take time to look around, identify dead giveaways or what is ahead of us. Pillars? Okay, gonna have to hide from something. Large open space? Okay, there's gonna be some crap on the floor going on, probably requiring positioning. Boss has some weird buff from the start. What does it do? Is there any way to get rid of it? And then after every wipe, people glued together some bits and pieces of ideas of what's going on. Someone noticed ads did more damage when they were close to the boss, right off tank, keep them away from the boss. Was there some weird instant death mechanic? How can you tell it hits you? What do you do if you get insta-KO'd? Outside of a few extra complex bosses we admittedly had to look up, we went through 2 years of raiding in SWTOR, ignoring guides completely, and it felt great. Right enough. Enough of my self-indulgence. Have a good week, everyone. That from Ionis. So, catching us up on the MMO world and his thoughts on both Final Fantasy XIV and WoW.
So, so first of all, I'm gonna when we start doing the Final Fantasy XIV instances, I'm gonna do them blind.
It honestly sounds like the best way.
I am going to rely on my experience as an MMO player and gamer to push me through. Like, I know how to push the buttons in the right order. I don't know how I feel about so I'm not a fan of flat percentage increases. Like, this dungeon is harder because the mobs take more hits. I mean, technically speaking, true, but in the boringest possible way, right?
That's the only difference between normal and heroic to Mythic Zero. But Mythic Zero Plus, there's more mechanics, and there's additional mechanic layer types, like you said, like the Sanguine effect and so on.
Yeah, I get it, and those were fun when they were done in the Division or wherever wherever I guess the original Destiny had the modifiers on group content too. Like, that's fine. I like I maybe Ionis, you can report back, but show me something in the new content that's as fun as the Blackrock Depths bar fight. Right? Just because I don't know how you do it in a 30-minute. I don't know how you do that in a 30-minute thing. And maybe you don't remember the Blackrock Depths bar fight, but you had to go to Blackrock Depths, and by the way, there was a bar inside it where the Dark Iron Dwarves and their allies were drinking, and then you did a thing, and then the bartender realized that somebody screwed with the grog, and then somebody walks in and it's like they did it, and then everybody starts fighting everybody, and like, I don't know, it's just really funny. And it was awesome to see the first time. Was it frustrating because, I mean, that place is really big and it took more than 1 week to sort of see everything? Yeah, okay. Like, if I look at it at just the right angle, I guess I could understand that. But like 30-minute adventures, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. Maybe all the Final Fantasy XIV dungeons are designed that way, and I'm going to be disappointed by them too. Like, that's possible. But I just want something more meaty. Like, I don't want my gaming experience, especially in an MMO, to be so damn shallow.
That's understandable. I feel like the Shadowlands bosses and dungeons so far have been of appropriate difficulty. Like we frequently fail our dungeons.
Okay.
Often, like, there's a big penalty for dying, for example. So that timer, when you die, you get a big chunk of your timer removed. At the lower keys, it's sort of like 10 seconds of your timer. But the higher the keys you go, the much more detrimental it is. So a death is a big deal.
Sure.
So if you have a wipe, for example, on a boss, oh geez, that can be like, can we even finish this anymore? And if you're trying to run like a +5 or God forbid like a +15 or something, which is really difficult, right? And you really need top gear and perfect tactics. And if you screw that up and you even get one single wipe, if you continue and finish the dungeon, you only get the rewards for a +0.
Okay.
Which is nothing, right?
Right.
So there is some real, incentive and reason for you to actually try. It's not as if you AoE everything down anymore. That's just not the case. That's been the case in previous dungeons for sure, but not anymore. Not in this expansion.
Okay. Okay, yeah. That's an important bit. Like the risk versus reward bit is an important part of the psychology behind all of this stuff. So, based on what you're telling me, like, it seems like maybe it's better than I think it is. Like, from an overall design perspective.
I mean, don't get me wrong, there's lots of wrong with Shadowlands. The story's BS, for example. There's some cool bits, but it's generally just ridiculous now. But the dungeons are at least. I think they're true to the original form of WoW dungeons, while still being. Like there was still a lot of problems with, for example, Maradon, right? Maradon, however you pronounce it, back in Classic, right? Mm-hmm. That was a terribly long dungeon, and there was really little reason to complete the whole thing, and it was just a bad dungeon. Whereas you think of like I don't know, Shadowfang Keep, that was an excellent dungeon, but maybe too short. But all those dungeons were difficult. Now we still have that good level of difficulty, but I don't think there's any dungeons I dislike in the new expansion. They're all very unique and fun, and some of the new mythic difficulties they're added on top. Like some of the dungeons you don't really notice that much of a difference, but some of them, oh my god, you're like, this week's extra difficulty is, I don't know, domination or whatever it's called.
So I actually have a couple of impossible. Yeah. I have a couple of follow-ups then. Are they the same for every instance? Like, is a realm-based set of modifiers, or does each instance
Yeah,
get
it's
its
the
own...
week for every WoW player on Earth. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Because I was just thinking if it was done in an instance by instance way, you would just dodge the tough ones.
No, if
Right.
you want to keep up with like the top tier people, you need to just grind through it. And some tanks just absolutely hate it because you're just like, oh man, I have to do these dungeons this week, or I want to get that one bit of gear that I need, or whatever. And
Sure.
yeah, it's fun to watch. It's just people like grief online when, oh, this week's this modifier, I hate it. It's funny.
Yeah. No, that's fair enough. That's fair enough. And that's again I'm probably not going to play any of this. So just based on your description of it, sounds a lot better than what I was conceiving of it in my mind, just hearing it sort of abstractly, I guess.
No, it's pretty good, and I'd say some of the dungeons are actually so complex that I've seen like even normal groups fail because of the complexities of dungeon design and such.
Okay.
If you are interested in looking at any of them, I would check out or like YouTube of a video of people trying to do the other side. It's a troll dungeon, right?
The other side.
Yeah, the other side, and it's fantastic. It is so tough, because the last boss requires you to damage him down while avoiding like pools of bad, which is fair enough. But then once every like 45 seconds to a minute, the big boss just kills everybody in front of him. Unless you move out of the way, you have to move to a different platform entirely by going through one of the 4 portals, and each party member needs to go through the right portal, or they'll go to the wrong place. And then you need to defeat some local guys in the 4 different places.
I just put it into YouTube, and there's an avalanche of Mythic The Other Side videos. So, although some of them are only 3 minutes long.
Well, the fight could be short if you have enough DPS, but it's still the amount of coordination required. Like if you just mess up one tactic, you die. Okay. It's great.
It sounds good that they are continuing to try to innovate and provide more difficulty into some of those events.
Yeah, I'm seeing this. So, and again, this is not indicative. I'm not suggesting that it's indicative of the whole thing. But here's The Other Side Mythic Plus tank walkthrough. TLDR 3-minute The Other Side Mythic Dungeon Guide.
Huh.
And it's got all the bosses listed, and that looks like to me a full instance or a full boss clear of the instance in 3 minutes.
Oh no! I just quick guide, I imagine.
Of actual player just showing mechanics, because that would be the difference.
Well, I'm not sure. Like I haven't clicked on the video, but I don't know. Maybe it's just the boss fights.
Well, if it's
even
TLDR,
if it
that's what I might.
The boss fights, like that's one boss in a minute, another boss in a minute, and another boss in a minute and a half. Which I guess for boss fights maybe isn't out of bounds if you're only talking the boss fight. I'm not sure. Anyway,
it's a TLDR, but I think that's assuming that you already have a vague idea of what you're doing. I think the average WoW player would look at that and be like, and still fail.
Well, okay, so 50% of all WoW players are dumber than average. So
very true.
So
can you always smile when I say that?
I don't know. I just find that amusing thought.
Yeah.
Again, it's average of what? Average of WoW players? Sure, they have to be, right? Average of the human population? I don't know. Is the average WoW player smarter or dumber than the average population? I don't know.
I would argue that the average WoW player is similar to the average population, considering how many there are. Looking back, as we... thank you, Ionis, for updating you or all of us about the MMOs, both Final Fantasy XIV and WoW. We were talking before the break more about this early access, and there's a question or a thought I have in general about the good, bad, and ugly of early access. I've heard in this conversation so far a lot of pluses in that you might actually get games that are going to better represent what the community really wants, and that people have more transparency and awareness of what's being developed compared to a traditional game. But I'm curious about the repercussions of it because twofold. One, do you guys think, my thought, that now I'll go back to my first one and think about the other one. The idea that you get to play these games first thing, and you start playing them right when they release in early access and the hype. Valheim that just came out, everyone's super hyped about. However, we don't know how long development's going to happen. And we see all these things on a roadmap about the things that could come out. Do you guys think there's any risk or challenge in that the game that eventually goes gold, by the time it does, most players will be over the game and not actually come back and play the gold version of the game?
Can I just say one word to that?
Yeah.
Minecraft.
Oh, yeah. That too.
You know, I think Minecraft has more players per day than a lot of new release games.
True, but now my question with that, though, is I'm curious, how many of those Minecraft players are people that started playing it 10 years ago versus how many of them are continuing to pick up new people who play? Because I have still found where Minecraft as a type of game highlights a demographic of a lot of young folk that keep coming up into gaming. You know, I remember when my nephews first picked up Minecraft, and since then, one of my nephews may touch on it on occasion where the other just gave up, doesn't touch it anymore. Same thing with my nieces. For a period of time, a couple of my nieces played the heck out of Minecraft, and then they were past it. But like in my own personal experience, it was for me, it was pretty much Terraria was a good example where I played it a lot in earlier stages of the beta, and once it went live and got 1.0 out, I maybe touched it again for a day or two, but never really dug into all the different changes because by that point, personally, I was playing other games. And so I'm wondering if there's not a risk involved with, depending on how long a game is in early access, that people who jump on it initially may get some fun and true enjoyment out of that game, but may never actually experience the full vision of the game because by the time it gets released, they may have moved on.
I think that's valid for somebody like you, who gets gaming wanderlust.
I do.
Yeah.
I play lots of different games.
Right, and there's again, I'm not calling it gaming wanderlust, just a shorthand.
I mean, no, I think it's accurate. I think it's accurate. I play lots of different games, and I don't play a lot of games to a lot of depth. So I know it might just be a me case.
So, but you know, I'm still, as a counterexample, I'm still playing Slay the Spire. You know, I still load up Darkest Dungeon on occasion, and I think I picked that up while it was in early access. So am I playing those? Am I playing those habitually? No, not so much. But I do come back to them every now and again.
I go back to Minecraft once in a while as well.
Yeah.
Well, so in both those cases where you guys are touching them once in a while, have you ever gone back to them with kind of the fervor that you had originally to really dig into seeing how big and expansive and new the game is compared to what it was however many years ago when it first released in early access? Or are you just kind of touching it a little bit to get that nostalgia and play it kind of like you played originally? I mean, do you really go in there and see like, wow, apparently since I last played and it went gold or whatever iterations in now, they've done X many new things, and therefore I need to take the time to really explore those?
So I would not have, or I haven't spent any money on the Darkest Dungeon expansion pack. To your question, I don't know that I would spend money on a Slay the Spire expansion pack, or a expansion DLC. Although I think the answer to that question would be yes, because I do play that enough that it would make sense. Although there's a version of Slay the Spire on iOS, and I kind of like that. I kind of like having that deck builder roguelike available on a mobile device. Now the accounts are not synced, so I had to start my progress all over.
Okay.
There's not necessarily anything wrong with that either.
Yeah.
Like that's fine. So I think it's very that experience is very individualized. I think if you're trying to play as many different games as possible, like you're probably missing out on features of every game that you play in early access that you don't come back to when it goes gold, right? I think that's fair. I think that's a fair thing to say. Does that matter? I don't know, man. That's kind of to you.
Okay. It was a curiosity because I've seen where a lot of games ebb and flow for overall popularity. You know, what's being streamed on Twitch, what is, you know, you generally, when I look over at my friends list, what is everybody playing? And there's a bit of the desire sometimes to be in that mix. Like, oh, everybody's playing Valheim right now. Maybe I should pick it up and play it as well.
Yeah, it's a social element, yeah.
Well, exactly, right? But then there's also the element of like, but because I would like to check out new games and keep up and I only have such games, is it worth me playing a non-finished game and maybe, or I play it in the state it's in today and that's fine and I enjoy it, knowing that I may never really come back and spend a lot of time on it. I did that with Ark. I played Ark when everybody in my family group and friends group were playing it, and then I walked away from it, and they kept releasing additional updates and stuff like that, and I've never felt the draw to come back to it, because by that time, a lot of my friends were playing other games. And there were the one or two that would come back, and they were the diehard Ark players. But the majority of my friends had already moved on to something else. It happens to me a lot in FPSs, because it seems like people are always looking for that next something innovative or somehow a change that keeps them entertained with the first-person shooter, that the online community especially migrates pretty regularly between what's the new popular shooter. And so I've run into that a few times where I just haven't felt the need to go back to, or if I did go back and check it out, it's like me doing it by myself. And it's kind of like, yeah, there's some cool stuff here, but it's not that first time playing through where everything was like, oh man, you know, and maybe if it's one of those games I spent a ton of time in, I might go back and say, oh, they really did change this thing and it's so much better. Or they finally finished this experience and that's great.
I went back to Minecraft after a long time, and I was impressed by the huge number of features now available, and like the end and everything was all added and all that. I was like, wow, I didn't expect this. You know, that was pretty cool. It felt like an end game in a lot of ways because it took a lot of grinding to get there, which was neat. But I definitely haven't put as much time into Minecraft as I did when I first got it. But that's not a bad thing. I think that's okay to have it as a game. Like, to me, it's just the type of game that it is, right? I mean, you can have some games that you still enjoy playing, but you only play for 5 minutes every couple of months. Or you can have others that are games that you enjoy playing non-stop for a month and then never touch for a year. That's okay as well. They fill different, they scratch different itches, don't they?
Mm-hmm. No, and
Minecraft as well. It's not just the actual playing; it's the ownership. The new updates actually made me purchase it again on mobile, so I could play it when I was on the journey to actually come see you, Wayne.
See, Minecraft's one of those hard ones because I own it in 2 places already, and I don't want to buy it again on, I forget which version actually allows true ray tracing now that I have a RTX capable card. And so I'm like frustrated that it's like, man,
I think that's
why
the Windows
can't
10
they?
version. Oh, sure.
Yeah, so I think I have the Java version and a version prior to that or something somewhere else that I was just like, or no, I think what it was is I have the Windows 10, but you have to buy specifically like the texture packs or something that allow RTX. Right. Whatever it was, I was like, no, I'm not buying the game again. I'm not going to be like certain people like Lantis that are going to own certain games on every platform it's available in because they love the game that much. I'm going to focus on the game, and that is part of my wanderlust, right? It's I don't go back and revisit games a whole lot myself. So like personally, my mitigation for this is like with Star Citizen, I am very much managing the amount of time I allow myself to play. Like I'll go in and check out an update and new features to see if it's something that really jazzes me up. But then I walk away from it and go play my standard games because I'm still waiting for Squadron 42 to release and for the full Star Citizen, because eventually I would like to spend hundreds, if not thousands of hours in the game. And I don't want to get burned out on it now, so that when I go back, it's like, well, it's better, but I've already done this. And I want it to be a new experience, right? Yep. And so it sounds like to a degree, this is part of my unique personality type, or my type that is, I'm realizing is not unique, but a type of personality where having a bit of entertainment and access to a lot of different things is meaningful to me versus the significant depth that you can go into that a lot of other people do.
Well,
and yes,
and
Lantis, I am calling out your Wise collection.
and it goes in waves too, right? Like I got a Fallout hair, I don't know, 4-6 months ago, where I rebuilt the reverse pickpocket character in Fallout 3.
Yeah.
And I rebuilt the idiot savant character, like the full idiot savant character in Fallout 4. And then, I've seen videos, and it was maybe H Bomber Guy that did the video talking about how Fallout New Vegas was better than Fallout 3, which is blasphemy. But
agreed.
You see these things at some number of times, and you're like, okay, I don't remember having half as much fun in New Vegas as I did Fallout 3, but maybe I just did it wrong, right?
Gotcha.
Possible, yeah.
Because New Vegas was done by the Obsidian guys, which are not Bethesda, and it may have been that I just didn't understand the mechanics. So did a little research, went into New Vegas and started playing, and it was fine, but I was having this annoying crash to desktop thing. And after about 5 of those, I was just like, you know what? This isn't worth it. I'm not having enough fun to warrant this frustration of making it 80% of the way to the next town, and and then having a CTD where I got to do it all over again.
That would be really obnoxious.
So, and at that point, I was just like, well, I'm done with this. Like it kind of killed it. I mean, it didn't kill because I was done with Fallout, with what I wanted to do in Fallout 3 and Fallout 4, which was to put live grenades on sleeping people and watch them blow up before they get a chance to get out of bed. Classic. By the way, that was the way I solved the Republic of Dave problem. Like, here, Dave, have a frag mine.
Nice.
It's live, by the way. Ta-da! You're not winning this election, sucker.
That's funny.
And really, the only reason why I even went up there was to get Old Painless. Right? There's a unique hunting rifle up there that's dope. And if you're not gonna go after A321's plasma rifle from in Rivet City, then Old Painless is the weapon to go get. Because it's really good. Really, really, really good. And you can repair it by using other hunting rifles, right? Which there are a million of, because super mutants have. So you can kill super mutants and get hunting rifles to repair it. So it's always in top condition too, assuming your repair skill is good.
Did you ever try the pugilist route?
Not a big melee guy in the Fallout universe, but I did it once. And I think I did. It was a super sledgehammer, which, I mean, just I love the idea of a rocket in, like, a small rocket on a sledgehammer.
Yeah, it's cool.
That's kind of a neat idea. So I did like a super sledgehammer style of all strength, medium high agility. So you've got the AP to swing that sucker more than once. And did a build like that, with all the necessary skills and whatnot. It was fun enough. I tried to do that in Skyrim so many times, and it was just like, nope, I'm crouching and using a bow because that's what I always do.
Well, it depends. If you get past the initial grind and you get all the stupid enchantments you need, whether that be in Fallout for modifiers or whatever, or in Skyrim, it is fun when you get to, especially if you add on a bunch of mods, which add an additional, types of punching somebody to death in a special mode. It's pretty fun.
So that's part of my, like Wayne was talking about personality traits. I play all my games like that naked or vintage, I guess. So the only mods I ever get for Fallout are radio station mods,
which are quite good.
Yeah. The Galaxy News Radio, more where that came from. Mwah.
You're still crazy for going modless. I feel like the game is incomplete without mods.
No, I see. I disagree. Like, if you can't play the game, if you can't like the game without mods, you don't like the game.
Oh, I can like it, but just like I could really enjoy having a burger without any salsa or without any flavor or cheese. I mean, it's still enjoyable, but I'd rather have my condiments. That's the way I see it.
Oh, well, see, I'm also anti-condiment. So.
Oh man!
Whoa! This is a whole nother depth of discussion
give me
about to happen.
barbecue sauce or give me death.
Well, that's still a condiment. That's fine.
And that's all I need. Well, okay, so the one, but if I don't have it, it's not like I'm sad about it.
Okay.
So I admit, that's
ketchup,
funny.
mayonnaise, mustard, any of that stuff? No. Keep that stuff away from my meat.
This public announcement, service announcement. this public service announcement brought to you by VtWShowX. No. Well, okay, no, I think this discussion's helped me a bit, because the idea that there are a lot of different ways people gain their entertainment about the ways in the games they play. I'm hearing quite a few people talk about revisiting games that they've picked up back in the day and checking out, even like what you're saying with Skyrim and Fallout, the Bethesda games, and mods or not. Like I'm in the Ken boat of I tend to break my Bethesda games by modding them to death. I play through them almost vanilla, and then sometimes if I find a mod that it's like, that just makes sense that you should be able to do that. And this goes back to my modding. I don't want
Thomas the Tank Engine replacing all my dragons.
I don't do that.
I do want to have. Yeah, I'll take 500 new songs across the. And I want visual effects for space.
I will do the physics mod on the arrow firing and stuff, so that's a little more accurate and damaging different parts of the body versus equal death for shooting someone in the leg and the head, and chest, and I'll do those kind of mods that give me a bit of more realism in the game.
Content. Free DLC, fan-made DLC. Entire new area. It's all voice acted. Yeah, I'll take that.
But at the same time,
I'm the whole point of playing the video game is not to, oh God, I can't aim for the part that I can see. I have to wait until the head comes around the corner.
Shooting them in the shin still works, but if you shoot it with the mod, they limp.
I appreciate you guys for wanting to play that way. Like, no worries, but I am not. That is not why. I'm not looking for realistic medieval combat in my.
It's not about realism. It's about fun, and sometimes the way that the game does something can not be as fun as what the mod makes it.
Okay.
So for me, like a whole nother topic about modding, because I am a huge advocate of mod community, but I'm still stuck now because I hear enough that maybe it actually might help me, in that maybe I can avoid the severe desire to jump on Valheim right now because it's what's popular now, and I can wait a bit because it will still be there to play it later.
So think about it. Think about it this way, Wayne. Every game in Steam goes on sale eventually.
Oh yeah. Well,
right. So
most
you could buy it. You could buy it at the early access price, or you could not have that early access experience and get the benefit of an extra X number of months or N number of months of development cycle and not pay that much more for it.
Yes.
Right? And I think, like, if we're really doing that kind of analysis to the point where it's not just a snap impulse buy, then probably the latter is better. Like, paying less for an unfinished product is all well and good, but paying less and having the benefit of more dev cycles is going to provide you more value overall than
who's the developer for Valheim.
Valheim?
Oh gosh!
Wow.
I just had it on my Steam.
Is it somebody who otherwise could not afford to do it other than doing it this way?
I'll tell you what they are.
Right?
I'll tell you what they are now is Richie Rich.
I know.
Yeah.
Developer is Iron Gate AB. Publisher is Coffee Stain Publishing.
Okay, don't know them.
Me either. I don't know anything about them particularly. And the little bits I got about Valheim is specific, right? Is I've heard more about the potential of what they're hoping to design, and thus this bigger, better game, and how people talk about the visuals are not necessarily as good as they probably could or should be, but the gameplay is pretty on spot right now.
Yeah, they are.
I've just seen a bunch of memes that are just
yeah,
all
they are
being
Swedish.
remade in Valheim.
Yeah, I saw
They're
Millennium
Swedish.
Falcon in a wood. So I
saw
have
the
seen some of
Shrek
that.
opening scene being remade in Valheim.
Oh, I did not see that. But yeah,
their studio webpage, which is like a single webpage, has got a Swedish extension on it, and their address is Sweden.
Nice.
So,
well, and there's something to that, right? Because heck, I see the value in this company has shown me something of vision that looks exciting. I'll support that. I kickstarted things, stuff like that. It's a challenge too, because at the same time, I tend to advocate heavily against pre-ordering games. Right? Yeah. Because now we're rewarding people for not potentially finishing games. And in all honesty, early access is the same way. You're rewarding companies for not having finished a game for an idea, for what we hope will be good. Right? That's the hope. All of us want everyone to be able to enjoy AAA amazing games. But it's a risk. The game may never come out. It may never hit that whatever was that they advertised was the goal. May never happen. And so I'm still a little stuck on like whether I have advice to give or not to others about what's out there. You know, I have partook of some things. You know, I paid for Star Citizen. I've paid multiple times for Star Citizen, always in a cheaper than most people I know. But
yeah, let's not go into
game.
that rule, because that's a special scenario. Cheaper than those around you doesn't mean that you put little money into it.
Oh, that's what I'm saying. I've spent more than a normal AAA title at launch, and yet I tell people in generic terms like don't buy it. You know, wait for it to come out is my advice to them. But I don't know if I would say that about every early access game. It's my general advice. That's like wait, but if you're going to have the fun playing it now because you have a whole group of people to play it with, and that's part of the joy of that kind of experience, maybe I'd say go for it. Yeah. It's really hard. I'm struggling still to kind of figure out where I'd lie on this. And I honestly, I guess my easy out, right, is it's dependent on the game. That some developers, some games, some visions may play better than others. You know, I've crowdfunded BattleTech because, damn it, I wanted to see the 3D, variation of the tabletop game. Because I love BattleTech. People do? No. But I wanted it. And so I guess it can be independent to you as an individual and the games you play and the game being developed.
No, it's such a hugely multivariant problem, right? That it's hard to come up with a set of hard and fast rules for like if this and that, then buy.
Yes.
If this and that, then don't buy. Like, I would always sort of err on the side of not doing early access unless I saw something from somebody I trusted to say, yep, that's the right thing.
Okay.
Or this game is good enough that you should play it now. And the number of people that I trust is not big. So it would have to be, somebody from the Isaac community whose YouTube videos I watch a lot of. If they recommended a new roguelike, like I would take an extra long look at that game to decide whether or not I would want to buy it in early access. That's actually a really good example because that's happened.
Okay.
I think that's how I got my hands on Slay the Spire, to be honest with you.
Yeah, that's fair.
So yeah, I think that's one of the things. Like I rail about how content creation and influencing is a giant bubble economy.
Okay.
But one of the nice things about it is there's always somebody who's playing a game that's going to be able to tell you what they think of it, right? And you don't have to rely on the Kotaku, Polygon, escapist, Ars Technicas of the world, Forbes, right? To figure out whether or not a game is any good. Like there's enough outlets out there now that you can get an opinion on a game that much closer from a person whose sensibilities are much closer to your own.
Okay.
So I trust people. I trust the people I trust until those people prove themselves to be unworthy of my trust, and then I find new people to trust.
Yeah.
Right.
No, that makes sense.
And yeah, I not much more to say about it than that. Like, find people that you trust.
Yep. So
listen to what they have to say about a game, and then make the decision for yourself as to whether or not you want to take the risk. Like, it's spending money. There's always risk.
Is that trust isn't just based on? It's not just based on that person's, experience. It's also on how close they are to your personal taste. For example, I trust you guys with your opinions on games, generally speaking, because you are very well experienced with games, but also you've heard me speak about what I enjoy. So if you try to recommend a game to me, you might stop for thinking and say, oh, wait, Ken really likes WoW and Factorio. He's a total weirdo. He probably won't like, I don't know, Racing Game Simulator X or Soccer Handball Game 7, right? Because even if they're made beautifully, I still don't care, right? You know that, though. And so that trust is really dependent on who you place it on, why you place it on them. For example, there are some reviews that like critics that I trust on YouTube very much so because they talk about how the games make them feel and how it fits into their nostalgic sense of when they grew up in the 90s. And that's very particular to me. But that might not suit you guys, for example, because you'd look at the 90s and say, well, they're not talking about arcade boxes, and that's the experience I had when I was growing up. They're talking about PlayStation 1 as their main thing. So that's different, right?
All right.
Yep.
So we've talked throughout this about the whole ways, I don't know, the market that's out there with early access is a challenging one for me, but I've heard enough from you guys. I think it's something I won't blast against as much as I kind of thought I should, because it really is dependent and on everybody's specifics of what joy you get out of the games you play. So I am reforming some of my opinions based on our conversation today, because part of me wanted to just start don't do it. It's evil. Force developers to always release the best game, and that's it.
Yeah, let's talk about that just before we finish. How are we ending the show? What are your guys' opinions now, and have they changed from the start?
I just said mine did some in the sense that I'm not as anti. I mean, Babs, I know in the chat earlier was very much early access bad, and that's kind of my generic feeling, and I try to avoid most. But it's also, I feel getting harder to differentiate between early access and just released games. Mm-hmm. Looking at the ones that are on early access right now, I'm like, really? That's still early access? Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, Killing Floor 2, that's just taking the piss. And plus, the amount of money they made from Killing Floor 1, they should have been able to launch that without any I don't know why they need that platform.
Well, and that's something, admittedly, we didn't discuss today about some of the other advantages to early access, like the idea that, Todd mentioned it slightly, but we didn't dig into it. Because something is labeled early access or beta, people playing it are much more willing to accept less than perfect games. And that it's going to have bugs, that it's going to fail, that not all the gameplay is in there. And that can be a strategy for developers to sit there and say, the longer we stay in early access, the longer we can milk the idea that we're not a complete game, and that, and actually that's something to bring up in the document I was reading, the study. They specifically said that the number of reviews of early access and the positivity versus negativity rate and things like that compared to released games is significantly less. 15% of people who get early access will actually comment on any form because they're it's early access. We know what we got into. Whereas with gold games, you get 85 whatever percent of people that would actually say this is garbage or good or whatever. And so it was a really obvious difference. And so if a company were to rely on that and say, because we're early access, we're doing this so that we don't get as much criticism for where we are today, that could be beneficial. And yet we still make the money because like anything, right? They're trying to make the money.
So I'm sure there's a developer out there that's decided to use early access for nefarious purposes. But I still come back to the fact that saying it's early access or saying that it's not done yet, at the very least, is honest.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, how many times, and especially in the last 10 years, like this is somewhat of a recent phenomenon, but how many times in the last 10 years have you seen a review from a game, whether it be on Steam or on a website or a YouTube video, where at some point during the review, the reviewer says it's not done,
Yeah.
or it needs 6 more months to cook,
Yeah.
or something along those
Well,
lines.
I think we can.
Talking about, Todd. You heard of popular games recently that haven't been playable on certain consoles? I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, I mean,
it's never.
You could very specifically
happened.
get into that with Cyberpunk, right? That what would have been the difference if what they had released a couple months ago was Cyberpunk 2077 early access?
Yeah.
How would that have been
2077 0.9?
Yep. How would that have been reviewed?
I think people would have been fine with it.
Right? There's a question there, and I don't know if that's good or bad. Because in a way, what we're saying is, well, what we're saying, right, is it's incentivizing companies to do this model more versus just baking a game and releasing it.
Okay.
But do we have to? Most of the okay. Laura, I'm gonna overgeneralize this, so please don't hate me in the comments and the emails and stuff. But most of the industrialized world has reliable enough high-speed internet access that the old model of I gotta bake a game until it's done and then I have to release it gold and take the 3 months to get it pressed onto discs before it ends up on a store shelf, before it ends up in somebody's computer, like that old model is dead. So are we not two things? Are we not supposed to grade everybody on a curve, which I think we are? Like an Activision game should be better out of the box than the 4-person indie dev studio.
And yet we often find the opposite's true. Yeah.
And yet we often find the opposite's true. I forgot what number 2 is. Oh, number 2, isn't it okay? Maybe 50 gigabytes is excessive. That takes 10 hours to download. But if I have to stamp my game is done 3 months before it's released, and in that 3-month dead period, I've managed to squish 10% of the top, the most critical 10% of my bugs, right? And I can roll it out on a patch on day 1, which outside of the annoyance of the download is going to result in greater customer satisfaction in the overall. Like, why shouldn't I do it?
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
As a developer.
That's a good point.
That makes a lot of sense.
So I don't know if we're... I'm sorry, Ken, go ahead.
No, sorry, I didn't go to I didn't realize you.
No, I just wonder if we're holding dev houses to the same standard when we should be grading on a curve and relying on old models of video game distribution that aren't really relevant anymore, except in the niche case that we judge all this stuff by. Like, I don't think calling Cyberpunk 2077 the worst game is a fair assessment of the game.
I agree.
No, it's not.
So,
That's a good point.
but you shouldn't listen to me. I was the guy who played Hellgate London, so.
And bought it again.
Yeah, I bought it again.
I mean, hey.
Never living that $8 down.
So my final closing comments on this is that
yes, close this out, Ken.
I think there needs to be a differentiation between early access and early access crowdsourcing. I think if you are World of Warcraft and you have your beta realm that you have access to anyway, and you don't pay anything for it other than your standard monthly fee to have access to the game in general, I think it's perfectly fine to open up testing to everybody that way. I think that's a great idea. I think it's a good way of the company saving money, and I think it's smart for them to do that way and iron out a bunch of bugs to increase everybody's pleasure when the real thing is released. I think that's a great idea for big developers to do. However, if Blizzard turned around and said, "Oh, we've got this new content patch for Shadowlands coming out in 3 months," if you guys raise $10 million. Like, no, that would be ridiculous. Who on earth would possibly think about giving? Well, it would happen, right? People would do it, but what sensible person would possibly give Blizzard money for an early access game and paying for that was going to come out unfinished? That would be moronic, right? It truly would be. So I think it's almost like there's like 4 quadrants, isn't there? It depends on whether you're doing it for testing purposes, and that's one half, and it's depending on whether you're doing it because you're an indie dev or you're a big dev. That's how I sum up whether it's acceptable or not what you're doing. So yeah, I'll happily buy early access. I'll happily fund a game or a product or an idea or an invention if I think it's worth. If I'm happy to lose that money, first of all, because it's a gamble, so it's an investment of sorts, and it's truly from an indie dev or small developer. However, I would never do it. For example, I would never pre-book or put down a deposit on a game. I think that's stupid, because why do you need to do that? Like, why do you ever need to do that in the game of digital downloads? We don't need to do that anymore. Like, it's not there's a limited number of digital downloads these days. Just download it. It's not a big deal. Yeah, pay on the day if you really want to. But to be smart, wait a week or two and then get it if you really want to get it early on, or wait till it's sale. So that's my overall view on how I purchase games and whether I invest in early. The only ones I've really put money in that are pre-release, I think, is probably Factorio, Minecraft, and I think that might be it.
Okay.
Which kind of shows, I think, because they both were off the charts successful. So
what Ken's trying to say is, like, he's got good taste.
Oh, obviously, clearly,
it's certainly better than mine.
What's the name of what's the name of a creature in Hellgate, London? We need to find like a name that we can call Todd whenever we're talking about it. Shut up, Hellspawn. I don't know.
Yeah.
All right.
That's my general view. And if you guys have any of your other viewpoints, we're happy to talk them out next week. If you send us an email to VtWShowX@gmail.com, we'd love to hear your viewpoints on when you think it's acceptable to put money into early access games, or whether you just get overwhelmed by excitement and do it and then kind of hate yourself for it. And also tell us your experiences. Have you done it and been glad? Have you ever have you ever regretted it? Had your hand bitten after putting money into the pot? Did you put money into No Man's Sky and then get excited for a release and then kind of hate yourself for 6 months afterwards? Let us know your opinions, your thoughts.
Planetary annihilation. Yep. All right, leave us out of here, Ken. It's time for us to end for this week.
You have been listening, watching, and enjoying ShowX here on VTW Productions, and on specifically Twitch and or YouTube. Thank you so much for checking us out. If you want to support us, there's a huge myriad of ways in which you can do so. Even if you listen to our Twitch stream, one way that you can help us, by the way, is by subscribing to our YouTube channel and liking the videos as you see them there. Little things like that increase the chances that we show up in search. So when somebody searches, what's going on with early access video games? Our video might have a higher chance of popping up if you like our videos on YouTube. And that doesn't cost you anything but like 20 seconds of your time to go and do that. I mean, that's a lot cheaper than supporting us on Patreon, for example. But you could also do that if you want to. Links for our Patreon, links for our Instagram, your Twitch, but you're already here probably, our YouTube, our Facebook, our subreddit, all that stuff can be found on linktr.ee/showx. I've been dropping into chat all the way through. You'll see it in there. It's on screen, I think, still. So go click that and find all that stuff in there. Also, email us in VtWShowX@gmail.com. Tell us your thoughts. If you have any ideas for our shows that you want us to cover, topics you want us to cover and such as well, we're open to suggestions as well. We tend to decide 3 or 4 days before the show what we're going to be talking about this week. So if you throw in an email just now, you could probably get an early grab on topics for next week. Who knows? We have another show that we do here on VTW, but it is no longer on Twitch. It is entirely YouTube-based. My God, video editing is horrible. I'm going to have to find a new way of doing this. So we're still going through this long design phase for this other show. It's called Where My Pros At, and we review books. We'll be reviewing another book in the next week, and the book that we covered this week will be uploaded soon, I promise. Like I said, video editing is a pain, and I'm just learning how to do it, and it's not going to be too pretty, I don't think. It's just going to have random cuts and edits here and there, and hopefully the audio syncs. It's going to be great. High quality professional stuff here. Yeah. So check that out on the same YouTube channel as where ShowX is uploaded, Versus the World video. Check us out there.
All right. With that, everybody,
With that, yes.
we're out of here, but we'd like to wish you all a very big salute to everyone for checking us out and joining us this week. And feel free to email us and let us know what's been going on with you as we get ready for the next week. With that, we're out of here. You guys have a good one. Bye.
Goodbye. See you next zombie. Good night. I forgot.